red light.
Good morning. Hey, Tunani. Welcome to Occupied Mechoopda Territory. California is home to thousands, if not or hundreds, if not thousands of tribes, tribal nations. I am in Occupied Mechoopda Territory here in Chico, California. Wherever you are also in occupied territory of a native tribe. And so seek that name out if you can to do your acknowledgements. But in the meantime, I just want to welcome everybody with a Hey Tunani and Tekin, which is also a thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ali. Some really quick ground rules. While Ali and Mel are presenting, if you have any questions or comments, please include them in the chat. Please keep yourself muted unless you're called upon specifically, and we'll unmute you so you can speak. If you have anything that you would like to share with the group as far as visuals go, you can email that to returncalifornia@gmail.com, and I will share that on our screen. Real quick background about how this all began. Yes, California, the largest Cal exit group in the state, started in 2012 to secede from the United States, and after disenfranchisement by so many people in 2016 with a completely botched Democratic primary and election that sees us with Donald Trump as our quote unquote president. We had a lot of success in recruiting, myself included. I became very active in the movement, and was shortly thereafter asked to become the outreach director because of my success bringing people into the conversation. It became clear very quickly that no conversation was going to be valid without the contributions of the indigenous people of California and their voices, which have historically been silenced in colonial settler mentality. So I started reaching out to the tribes and to tribal people from all over California, and there was a very quick understanding where the need for support would come from. Pretty much every person that I spoke to said that if we wanted to have the support of indigenous Californians, that we had to start talking about land back initiatives and about tribal sovereignty and about traditional ecological knowledge. So really flying blind and learning protocols as we go. We hosted a first listening session in Grass Valley last year in August. The Nisenan tribe welcomed several tribes to the area, and we started the conversation. After the first listening session, we had a lot to process, and so it was about 10 months later where we had the second listening session, and that was hosted by Val Lopez of the Amamutsan Band of Ohlone Indians down in Monterey County, Central Coast. And he spoke really eloquently about land trust initiatives and all of the initiatives like his, Karina Gould's in the East Bay with the Segurite and several others. And we started compiling a database of resources for indigenous nations that wanted to do something similar. And both of those listening roundtables are hosted on our website, returncalifornia.org, as will this one. And we're really excited to take the next step in this conversation with Ali Meddersnight and Mel Figueroa. And without further ado, I'll let them begin. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a presentation. I didn't know we needed to send that to you, so I just sent that to you. Or if you want to make us co-host, I can share a screen too. It's up to you.
It might be easier if I do it. Then you don't have to manage both. I'm bringing it up right now.
Sure. I teach on Zoom, so I do this all the time. So.
Oh, would you prefer to do it? Would that be easier?
It's totally up to you.
If you're a
we
pro,
might be sort of switching back and forth, so it might be easier if I do it.
Okay, let me give you access.
Thank you.
All right, you're the host. You should be able to share your screen now.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so so the way that we are sort of looking at sort of a land back type of initiative is through the traditional ecological stewardship. I don't know if you want to say some opening stuff before we dig in.
Yeah, so for those that are not familiar with traditional ecological knowledge is just the science in which traditional or native tribes, pretty much in the United States, as we call it, or Turtle Island, but a lot of Canadian First Nations do this. This is a traditional ecological knowledge is basically used as a tool for workforce development on land management. So based on the knowledge, ancestral knowledge of how the watershed, lands, and work, pretty much a workforce similar to, say, Army Corps or Job Corps are put together to do land management, and then they pull product and whatnot out of and do goods for services out of this forest. So TEK is kind of become a name that's not necessarily the same for every single tribe. So say in California, my TEK is a lot different than Alaskan tribes TEK, just based on place and what we have as far knowledge. So I just want to explain that before we go forward.
Yep. Great, thanks. So, and as we all know, I'm just going to sort of gloss over this but I want to lay out sort of the types of realities that we're facing and how traditional ecological knowledge can like address a lot of sort of the multiple crises that we're facing, right? So not only do we have the historic wildfires, now that we've had our second historic fire in Butte County that has exposed many of the vulnerabilities to natural and man-made disaster. A lot of this, of course, forest mismanagement, not the way that the logging companies want to talk about it, but of course the 180 years of colonial policy that has, removed removed through genocide the keystone species of this ecosystem, as well as fire suppression and taken away of fire from a fire adapted landscape. We also have, because of course, the Camp Fire that happened 2 years ago, and now, unfortunately, what the Bear Fire has done in Berry Creek, there's housing crisis, right? We're looking at climate refugees. We're looking at a desperate need for affordable housing. We're, sort of talking about how like our livelihoods are actually colliding with this ecological reality. We also, again, the job market, of course, COVID has initiated an economic crisis in this country. There's not many opportunities in the job market. Of course, the cost of higher education is going up. So there's really a lot of barriers to access to do environmental work. And also, a lot of local, state, and federal agencies are siloed in the work that they do. The something like a wildfire, of course, takes multiple agencies to handle. It's a really complex problem. It's got a huge scope. And, as we're seeing, there's, people are, again, the government just got here 180 years ago. So there's not a lot of, they're making it up as they go along because, and looking at the immediate thing. But there is really an urgent need for a viable solution, as many of these agencies are running out of options. All right, so as Ali mentioned, traditional ecological knowledge is a system of ecological science and technology. developed by indigenous peoples over 20,000 years. This is something that, again, a lot of people are starting to wake up to, right? That it wasn't just hunter-gatherers scraping together a livelihood. You know, it was incredibly sophisticated systems of science. One of the things about TEK is that it has a slightly different scientific method than what we're used to, right? We're used to have a scientific method that's based on a controlled experiment, that's based on falsifiability, that's based on, you know, the being able to isolate different mechanisms of things based on experiment. Well, in traditional ecological knowledge, the experiment is the landscape itself. It's based long term, and by long term I mean over multiple generations. Observation, experiment, outcomes, and maintenance. If you want to talk a little bit about that from your experience.
Which one for the?
Just traditional ecological knowledge based on.
Well, you know, and I think that this is the how would you say, this is a turning point in California where we're trying to realize the gravity of our projects. So you have 33 million acres just alone in California, 33 million acres of forestry. 19 of that is federal forests. All right. Now we spend close to 500,000 or 500 million, which is $500 million every year, and we plan on doing it up till 2035 as promised. Pinky promised. That we'll do that for till 2035, and we're going to spend $500 million to do 1 million acres a year. So we have 33 million. We're going to do 1 acre a million a year, 1 million acre a year out of 33 until 2035. When you do the math, that still is not management. It's still not what it is. So what we're trying to explain is the TEK, all this land that's on this federal forest, these 33 million acres are actually on occupied territory of a tribe. And there is traditional ecological knowledge that goes with that forest, with that place, and there is a tribe connected to that knowledge.
That's right. So when we talk about wildlands, with that 33 million acres, they call it wildlands, right? Like wild forest, as in like, and when you say wildlands, right, of course, they like the imagination is that like nobody was there, but that's, you know, obviously a misunderstanding and you know, an obscuring of the extensive history that 33 million acres was actually extensively inhabited by people, right? And they have, and the thing that makes TEK sort of a better solution than all the others they've come up with is that those people that lived in those forest lands have privileged knowledge of the active human management required, right? So getting away from that kind of nature and society divide, here's people and then here's what wilderness, right? There is no wilderness, right? All of this was managed and people made their living off of it. People sustained generations off of these native ecosystems. Again, these things are specific to place, right? So, and so every place has a tribe attached to it, as Ali said. But also the other thing is about disasters and about exactly what we're talking about now. You know, people are talking, okay, climate change, this is the first time this has ever happened. There's, you know, these disasters are being caused by climate change. Well, yes and no, right? Because climate change is exacerbating the pattern of disasters that California has gone through. You know, and again, only people who have had those long-term over generation knowledge of this actually understand it in that deep time, in that deep sort of time frame. If you want to talk a little bit about that pattern of fire and flood that California has gone through, that again, us or the US only being here 180 years doesn't really understand the depth of.
Yeah, I mean, it's evident. I mean, California is 180 years old. So it was founded in 1851, And it really took a while for people to get here. And so in 1860s, you had a huge, the 200-year-old flood that came through. The observation was, oh, wow, all these natives pretty much disappeared into the mountains. They all went off the valley floor. And then here comes this big, what we call now today, Pineapple Express, which is a river in the sky that flies over California every 200 years and dumps a river into the watershed and basically flushes the state. And this flush does a lot of, that it basically puts this great, beautiful, yummy soil from the forest that had been, taken care of, and flushes into the valley floor. And you have this great farming land. So the last 180 years, you've had busy colonizers all over the place, building on this great soil. But here comes the flood, and you're about 20 years out for another huge one, and it's going to be bigger than the one in 1860, which pretty much put Sacramento completely underwater, as well as Marysville and Yuba City. Pretty much every ranch on this valley floor was wiped out and had to be rebuilt. So to be perfectly honest, people really haven't been in this area living and kind of established until after the 1860s, after the big flood. So essentially, this is a booby trap. So if you're not going to get burned by the fires, you're going to get, there's a pattern. It goes fire, and then the fire brings a lot of rain, and then the rain does some flooding, and then once the flooding gets down to the creeks, and then you got to have a series of earthquakes, and then boom, 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 boom. And this is just happens, it's a pattern of California, how the land does itself. It has nothing to do with us. It's nothing that we need to take personal. So this is something that just happens. And so adapting to this pattern is part of the survival of being a true Californian.
Right. All right. So do we want to go into the 20-year stewardship, or go into and the contracting, what that looks like, or go into the sort of the land trust type of portion of it?
Let's go into land trust real quick, because I think
Sure.
that's what people are interested in looking how this works.
Okay. I'll just leave it on this slide. So go ahead.
So when you're looking at, well, let's look at disaster recovery. Can we talk about that?
Sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
First, because that's going to make
Okay.
more sense if we're talking about paradise, because I have to use that for an example.
Absolutely. So let me go into our other presentation here on disaster management. Since we are in an active disaster declaration, and so this is very, very relevant to what to where we can, a first step that we can take. So go ahead.
So so when you have a disaster, you've heard of tribes doing their separate declaration of disaster along with the state of California to the federal government. And the reason is because California and a tribal nation, a federal tribal nation, are pretty much equal in sovereignty, right? A tribe, a federal tribe, is a sovereign nation, and we have to pause for the domestic dependent issue there. And then, but what we have is that these sovereign nations within the United States are within the domestic boundaries. And that is just how states work in the United States. There's just a bunch of separate states that work within the boundaries, are bound together on a federal status of being United States of America. And in federal tribes, especially, across the United States, they all have this sovereign nation, this treaty. These treaties are pretty much the only thing that make United States exist, is that they have treaties with nations on the land that they're on to prove they have the right to be there. Mm-hmm. And if you don't think that's odd, I'll just explain real quickly that the reason why we have such a unusual relationship with, say, our colonizers in Europe is because of the Revolutionary War, and then additionally because the people that drafted and made the treaties with the native nations were not qualified or even authorized or liaison or anybody in Europe to even make those agreements with tribes. tribes were almost had a higher stature than the pilgrims and the settlers that showed up here. But because of white supremacy, because of racism, anybody with fair skin and from Europe felt they were entitled to do any type of agreement with a tribal nation. And thus we have all of our political issues that start. But the bottom line is California and tribes are in the same boat when it comes to disaster recovery, because they are separate in the eyes of the federal government.
Mhm.
So that here, you want to go
So,
on?
yeah.
Now this will explain
now
this.
now we can get to the slide. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
but that was great history. Yeah, one of the things that a lot of folks that don't that don't deal with Indian country on a regular basis don't understand is that these are states. So tribes are state apparatuses that work on the same level as like a state government, right? It has all of the infrastructure that's needed for that, and has the same legal rights to disaster funding, to be at the table, the same right to be at the table as the state of California, right? And so, this is the National Disaster Response Framework. This is the law of the land in terms of disaster recovery, and that it shows that, again, this equal relationship of public agencies, right, that are supposed to work together in an engaged partnership over both the short term in terms of response and also the long term. In terms of wildfires, this of course means fire mitigation and prevention activities as well as suppression, right? And so, but of course, in practice, right, tribal governments are not treated on an equal level as a state government or even a local government. Again, there's something like the wildfire task force, has a tribal seat we didn't even know about until we talked to the governor's tribal advisor. It's sitting empty because nobody is, doing outreach to tribes to get them to the table. And so this is an instance right now where, as of 2016, you have the letter of the law saying that tribal governments are public agencies. They are supposed to be included on an equal basis with all the other public agencies in a disaster area, and yet in the practice still has yet to catch up to the letter of the law. Just real quick, oops. So here's what a FEMA disaster recovery timeline looks like. And so again, there's this whole sort of mitigation, preparedness, wildfire risk management type of a phase. And, that's actually initially what we were kind of trying to get the tribes to, have a greater participation in through TEK, through being able to manage the 180,000 acres of federal land here in Butte County in order to do fuels management, do watershed restoration, and ecosystem restoration. Of course, the Camp Fire happened, and now the Bear Fire has happened. So now we are in this phase, which is in the post-disaster recovery area. And again, even if you don't live in Butte County, the entire state of California actually is under a disaster declaration. So this is the same timeline for everybody. So again, for the 2020 fires, we're in the short-term recovery. Right now, it's just about emergency management and, sheltering people, putting out the fire. This intermediate and long-term area, this is sort of the realm that we're getting into with the Camp Fire, right? And the Camp Fire before COVID was actually the bidding process for the phase 2 of this intermediate long-term recovery, this debris removal actually, which is hazard tree removal. And that is where basically in practice, FEMA in the state of California and Cal OES will contract with these gigantic giant corporations logging, like that basically come in, salvage log the whole place, put down more conifers. They do what they are, like they normally do, right? Which is not really based on a lot of science. It's based on profit making, and it's based on just being able to get the billion-dollar government contracts. So this is where, when we have formed an intertribal consortium with other Butte County tribes, as well as the Washoe, Mono, and Paiute, and other tribes in the Sierras, to create a intertribal stewardship workforce initiative. And that's an intertribal consortium that says, hey, wait a minute, right? If tribes are supposed to act on an equal basis as state governments, we should have a say, or tribes should have a say, and tribes should have a carve out of the work that is being done. And so for the campfire, but right before COVID, and sort of the whole contracting process fell apart after COVID on the federal level. So that, but what ISHWI, which is ISWI, was for was a 20% carve out of the campfire footprint in terms of hazard tree removal, replanting, right, and fire hazard mitigation for the long term. Again, that was that was the first time really that this tribal consortium kind of put its foot down and said, there is a legal basis for this, and there is a legal basis for a tribal carve out to do this work. And that took all of the agencies by surprise. So they weren't quite sure what to do about it.
Yeah, and they also wanted to have, they were treating us like we were trying to get sole source contracting. So they kept pointing at the federal regulations saying, even if you're native, you don't get sole source contracting, which they call 638 contracting. So you really have to compete with non-native people on your own territory to do land management. They don't know how screwed up that sounds coming out of their mouth, especially to somebody like me who's very sensitive about that.
And not just non-native, non-local. I mean, some of these crews come from New Jersey and Pennsylvania or in Texas, right, to come in and take up all of the housing, take up all of the motels and worker housing to do this.
So, and then on top of that, so we have I lost what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, finish. Go ahead.
Part of it too is that ISHWI is also helping to guarantee local jobs, right, in disaster recovery under the authority and aegis that tribes hold, as this being their territory. Go ahead.
So the issue is trying to get the tribe to even recognize their sovereignty through our constitution, through our basically our status as a federal tribe, that we could also create our own certification program through traditional ecological knowledge to do workforce development. So it's not so much 638 contracting or sole source, but we want to be able to bring and prove that not only natives, but non-natives, people from the community can come in and work long-term, 20-year, we're talking 20-year contracting for this forestry. 20-year, we're looking at getting workforce development, getting people on the land working. But additionally, this is going to needs to have tribal support. So tribes are going to be able to have to envision themselves of having resolutions and programs that say, no, we do TEK and we do land management. So when you touch a pine needle in our territory, you got to come talk to us. And essentially, what this is really coming in for the big punch right here, what essentially is what we also have is private property owners. Private property owners are looking, and this is what we're developing. They'd love to prove to their insurance companies for fire insurance that they're working with local tribes and have a a land management plan with native plants and restoration going on, and then we could prove at some point through these studies that we could reduce the your chances of being burned in a big fire. But the thing is that you a big fire. When you have what we have, a huge complex fire like we have in Oroville right now, it could go over a 1 million acres of managed forest and still do burn. You know, it just won't burn as bad or as much because it won't be there so much. But at the same time, it doesn't stop the fire from coming. And so we have to focus on urban interface. And so this is what you're looking at here, this traditional ecological knowledge, creating certification, workforce development, and then we do this contracting. It all goes into, well, what are private property owners really going to get? Not only for having traditional workforce development that are managing their lands in a traditional way that is more fire adaptive, but secondly, what are the other perks that we can give if we want, if the citizens of California say, you know what, I'm not feeling California so much. I kind of like living in Machifta territory. How can I make this work? Maybe living in California ain't for me, but I don't want to move. I want to stay in my house, but I don't want to be in California anymore. Well, baby, this is what I'm here for. So this is where we're going in for the rest of this presentation is there's two games. There's a long game. The long game is tribes go in and get stewardship contracting on federal forests. We got 33 million acres, and everyone helps support and push the tribes to be able to manage these forests, or at least have rights to them, because this is more land-based for the tribes. This is theirs. This is also a way of being able to get other new managers on the land without kind of, it's like property management. You change property managers doesn't mean you got to move out of your house. You still get to stay there, just changing who your manager is. So you have the federal managers on your federal forests and say, hey, we don't like your CAL FIRE as much as we like our tribes. And maybe some counties will say, we like CAL FIRE and the tribes, and they both hold hands and skip it together into the woods and help manage it. We don't know. That could happen. Okay. But the situation is that also private property owned, that's a long game. That's 20 years out. That's 30 years out. So that's a huge long game. The short game is that we look at this disaster recovery, and we start looking at the way that corporations, like we just realized, have capitalized on disaster. This is disaster capitalism. They've come in and they've looked at all this fire. So it costs $500 million for 500 million to manage 1 million acres. But if 1 million acres seems to be burning without what do you call it? Without notification, just on its own, being super naughty, it costs $10 billion for that recovery. So you can spend $500 million to manage it, but if you don't and it burns, it's going to cost you $10 billion to get over it. Mm-hmm. So if you like your money, California, I would be looking at this program real careful, because what you can do also is say, we need to shake up these building codes. Mm-hmm. So for instance, right now during this recovery, the building codes in our county, Butte County, and then within the state of California, are forcing homeowners who bought homes less than $100,000 when they got it. They haven't really got a big settlement, but they're going to have to build a home that's nearly $500,000 just for a 2-bedroom home, just to fit the requirements of being fire adapted and having the right material for the insurance company and being placed in the right location so it doesn't burn to the ground. All these things that weren't there 40, 50 years ago are here now. And these regulations are killing these old folks and people that are just not used to this red tape and bureaucracy that goes with home building. And it's only made now for big corporate developers. That's their game. They love that game. That's ice cream to them. But to these homeowners, it's hell. And so we have an opportunity as a tribe to come in and even at all these places and say, what can we do together to work with to get over with the man, because we don't have building codes on federal land. That's why we have a bunch of abandoned trailers on federal, we ain't got no rules about that, you live where you live.
But also tribes can adopt things like international cop code, and
Yes.
because they are a sovereign government.
And then all you really have to do, because it's a government to government relationship, is go to your tribe. Then you build a consortium partnership. You, like in Paradise, they're actually taking red clay out of Paradise and shipping it to Nevada to build cob homes, but not cob homes, and they're fire resistant. Cob homes are fire ready. So we should be building cob homes up in Paradise, California. And the only thing that they can't go through the county codes. It's impossible. It's so hemmed up by bureaucracy, by corporate developers, that it is impassable. It is impossible for people to get these things done. The only option is to just shake it up and say, okay, what if I turned my land into a trust from the tribe? And if the tribe gets in an agreement with the county and takes on the liability, which, by the way, let me tell you, tribes do have sovereign immunity. So liability issues are kind of easy to deal with. We just play our sovereign immunity card. But the important part is that these MOUs, these memorandums of understanding between government to government, can really help the local community out. And this doesn't mean that all of a sudden, if I have a home, private property, and I put it into a land trust with the tribe, that the tribe gets to run my life. Actually, no, you're in a public law 280 state in California. All your criminal jurisdiction, everything falls straight under the same thing. There's going to be zero change. And because it's not real land and trust, it's just under an MOU agreement with the county, not real trust land, but you can make an agreement on this land and treat it however you want to with the tribes, because these are governments talking to each other, so they can do a lot of fun stuff. And what they can do is basically say the tribe helps, maintains the property tax on your property. So if you ever default on your property tax, it leans into the tribe. So a tribe would basically have first rights on a lien on a home or property that happens instead of the state. So in the perfect world, if you took, you have a home and you leave it to your son and everything's paid for and everything's tight, no one's going to knock on your door. It's still your land forever and ever. It's just that once that piece of deed gets, it no longer actually defaults to the state of California. It defaults to the tribe and the territory that you have the land agreement on. It's just a beautiful thing. And so, because it really doesn't take advantage of anybody or put anybody out, it just gives somebody a help up. And then in payback, it's just that we consider that land in the long term part of tribal territory. And like I said, it's not even trust land. So it can be bought and sold and moved around just like any other piece of land. And the bank can do things with it as well. So it kind of helps give people an insight on how this works. And basically, the other insight, which is kind of far off, and I'll just throw that in there right now because this is in the works. We really need to be working with insurance company on this fire, on having fire adapted landscapes and having tribes come in and do this environmental impact review on fire management and looking at big, huge scales. So just like behind me, there's a topography of Butte County that I painted. And so I live right here on my painting. So I can see how this watershed works. And we really need to have this understanding of our watershed and our land so that we can look at the big picture together.
Okay. So, so to that end, right, I mean, because these are government to government negotiations, we've been talking with the Butte County Fire Safe Council, and, in terms of like including some TEK standards into the Firewise communities standard. Also, again, being able to have a tribal, because tribals are governments, they can also write their own environmental standards that surpass CEQA, right? And can be, okay, if the tribe stamps it, then it's definitely going to pass CEQA, it's definitely going to pass, so it's like tribal EIRs. is another way that these things can be written into the standards through government to government relations. What that means for private property owners is that private property owners might, if once that is in place, private property owners will be able to get the FEMA public assistance in a post-disaster, right, to bring in native crews and be able to contract locally. They can also, hopefully we can work with the National Resource Conservation Service and get EQIP, so environmental quality impact mitigation funds, to be able to support contracting native and TEK certified crews on private lands, as well as bring it under this sort of umbrella of sovereignty.
Yeah, so what is important is that even what we have now is that we have disaster recovery. They still look at tribes. The tribes are basically there to do cultural monitoring. It's the historical part. It's just the pestles and the mortars and the artifacts that really make a big, huge difference. What make a that's what we're looking at for disaster recovery, is to look at those artifacts. But this is the game changer, as we're here to manage the land in our territory for years and eons to go in, and we have people that have private property on our tribal territory. So we have to make the package attractive for everyone to participate, and not only attractive, but sensible and logical. It has to be logical. It has to make sense, because what we're living with right now and the colonial mindset of how we take care of our things does not make sense. And so this is an approach and a package that's really important to give tribes the authority to do land management, and this is the big key to it. If we do federal land management on our acres, California saying, imagine this perfect world where, Governor Newsom wakes up. Oh, that's not a perfect world. Never mind. Okay. So I ended it right there. No. Okay, so Gavin Newsom wakes up and says, I think I'm going to give every tribe in California 25,000 acres of forestry, and they can manage it. And I'll split the budget of California and what I get from the feds and hand it over to them. And the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give them the authorization to do goods for services. So what that means is that California tribes, because they're their own little machine, their own nation, we get to take our 25,000 acres as Machupta, and we go, okay, we can contract. We do contracting for logging, and we make a little money off of logging. But then we also say, you know what? We can also do a biomass plant. We could take this and work with 5 other tribes, buy this biomass plant in the valley, run 20,000 homes on it without PG&E, off the grid. And we all just put our little messes together. We put all our nasty piles of forest garbage and send it to the biomass place. And we also be able to take the cob, say we get from the land, to build cob homes and pay people. And then, I don't know, I'm a basket weaver. Let's just say we start chopping up willow and putting it into stalks and putting it into a product here. And we also make products out of acorn flour, because we got acorns for days. We got it like that. On our 25,000 acres of forest, we got tons of acorns. And then we have also a seed bank, because we've been pulling seeds off of 25 acres of forest. I've got all kinds of fun seeds in a seed bank that I can help restore another forest. I'm going to tell you, all of these things are so possible. If you give a tribe 25,000 acres and give us the amount to make money off of it, which is actually the brand new thing.
Goods for service.
Goods for service is brand new. That came from the USDA, because Trump is a businessman. And he said, you know what? Screw the federal forest. You guys are naughty. I don't like you.
Find somewhere other way to pay for it.
That's his attitude. You're losers.
Yeah.
So he said, I'm going to give the money to the USDA. And then USDA says, okay, I'm going to do 20-year stewardship contracts to tribes because they kind of got more shit going on, excuse my French, than say some of the local municipals, right? And say, we're going to let tribes do products for services as long as they partner up with all the white folks and non-native folks in the town, they're good to go. And everybody makes money. And yeah, it's still sitting there, and no one's, and only certain tribes are working on it. So because it's brand new, it was 2018 Farm Bill, put all the money into the Farm Bill for forest management. So it's all sitting there. So everyone's still looking at forestry and USDA forest, and yeah, it's broke. They ain't got no money. They don't. But if you go through the USDA, then you go through goods for services through tribes, you got yourself a business. And case in point, I live in Chico. I'd like to say, okay, we're going to have a relationship with Sierra Nevada. And now we do land management and we provide a product through our 25, you know, 25,000 acres of forestry. We get tons of elderberry, and we do huge elderberry, and we bring it over, and they have some kind of elderberry beer that has our Machupta name or something on it. You know what I mean? It's a product, and we get services, and we make money off of it in the town. Everyone dances. We have a festival. It's great. So that's kind of how we want to look at this management and how it goes for services. So when you hear people say, yeah, it costs a lot of money to manage a forest, and we give it to the tribes, aren't they poor? Well, yeah, some of us are poor, Machupta's poor, not all of us are poor, but I wouldn't mind putting a gun to the head of a casino tribe and tell them, move. You spend your money on forest management and workforce development, move. I don't mind that, but I think that it isn't necessary. Everybody in every community, and even tribal governments, are going to say, oh, look, we have an opportunity to do economic development on land we've never been able to do before. And so along with partnership, we have to do a partnership with non-natives in the area in order to do it. So it's really set up for success if we all hold hands and do it. So go ahead.
John?
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys could give a concrete example of what that would look like. Let's say, for example, that we have a group of people who want to pool their resources and purchase a piece of property and get involved with the tribe and do all these things that we're talking about. Is there like a timeline or kind of a checklist that we'd go through to do that? What exactly would that look like, if it's even possible to lay it out like that?
So you got to make it attractive for tribes. So my tribe is a hard sell. So every time I come to them, I got to give them what's in it for them type deal. They're just like any kind of board of directors for a CFO or, you know, for a for-profit company, really. So you got to go in there and say, this is what's in it for you. Invest in me, and this is what you get. So you're basically, if you put together a land package and want to offer it to a tribe, you really have to look at it like you're putting a land package together and going to, like, you know, Macy's or some Macy's board, or somebody's like, why are you giving this? And you've got to give them what's in it for them to make this investment worth it. And that's where I get into this land trust and say, look, you can follow, we can create really easy, and this is what we're doing, and we can send it over or post it so you can have it on your website. It's just a basic understanding of how these MOUs work, all right? And once you get the schematic of how a memorandum of understanding can work between a tribe and tribal governments, and then you can go into the policies that they're addressing, then you can get right into the meat, right into the very center of what is in it for the tribe. And I spoke about it earlier, where the tribe doesn't have to put it into trust, because remember that, tell you that checkerboard thing where if you have land in trust and you want to put more land into trust to add to the tribe, it has to be adjacent. That's federal law. And that was put there because of the checkerboard. It was there as an obstacle. It was there as a screw you tribe kind of thing. But we're going to work around it like we always do. And so in order to work around it, you go through this MOU process where it's just a land trust agreement, right? So under the land trust agreement, then you get into the logistics of it's still the county that you're in. They still have the municipals. They still have, there is just a relationship between the tax, right, of the property, the tribe, and the state or the county.
Mhm.
And so what that basically means is that on a land trust, a person who can't pay their property taxes should probably go to the tribe and say, yo, I'm having some problems with my taxes, la 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 la. Then you have an intermediary. You actually have a mediator. You have like a mommy and daddy that kind of be like, because if you don't, the tribe has the first option to pay it off and put that into their owning. Now that just means that it's not in trust. So that is, the tribe is going to be like, I have to pay property tax on that land now. But they have the option, and it kind of adds to what they own in the area, not like a regular person. It's not land in trust yet.
Mhm.
Now, eventually, if it's smack up dead next to a tribe, then, and you say, hey, my tribe touches your federal land, and I want to get into land trust agreement, and basically, I want to use your building codes. Oh, you don't have one? And that's where we have. We're trying to get it so it's all there. Here's your resolution. Here's your building code. Here's this. Do you need to hire somebody to inspect?
Mhm.
Here's this federal grant, and here's this shit.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, you have to have all the solutions, basically. The tribe, once the tribe, I believe any tribe starts to get that this is where it's at, it's real estate, and people are throwing real estate at them like it's free stuff. I don't know what analogy that sounds like, but anyway,
shut up and take my money.
yes,
Shut up and take my land.
I'm just throwing it at them.
Yeah.
They really have to not get overwhelmed and have to see how this is run.
Yeah.
And so the benefit is getting affordable housing, a housing that people can actually build on their homes, build on their property, and giving them a way out. It's almost like people are backed in a corner so bad, so desperately bad, that you got to give them a way out.
Mhm.
You have to give them an option to survive. And one of them is to say, hey, join us land trust. Basically just means that by default, the tribe could get your land instead of take California or the city or the county.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Yeah, and it also like sort of basically works like a HOA after that.
It does.
Right, where yes, the tribe will assume liability or assume the tax burden, etc., and get have some kind of agreement where the property, the people who live there can pay for maintenance, for the contract, for to make it fire safe, to be able to build fire safe housing for TEK managed landscape, say on the neighborhood level, right? Those things, yeah, I mean, like after sort of the trust infrastructure, the way that it works on the day-to-day is basically, straightforward.
Are there
So what we found is that, and like you can imagine, going to each tribe and telling them how to run their nation just doesn't go over very well. So, men, silly men, but no, and they're women too. But the thing is that that is a hard sell. It's very anti-seductive to go to a tribe and say, look, I've got a great idea of how to run your nation. Here are all these nuts and bolts and programs and blah, blah, blah. So we've tried that. I tried that with my tribe, and it was so not working. They don't like it. So, and they were like, run for office if you want to run this tribe. And I'm like, no. So what I decided to do is have my brother run for office. And then we built a consortium. So we decided to do a consortium. So we're consorting with all these tribes. We have Berry Creek, Moortown, Calaveras, Washoe, Machupta, Pascanta, and we're just putting this intertribal council, stewardship council.
Mhm.
And so this has gotten enough friction to where we're getting admins, Sierra Institute, that wants to admin this this basically consortium, and it's not even admin by a tribe. It's admin by, a forest product company. And so this is kind of how it's starting to work out for us. So it might be similar to Return California, is to also create the same type of consortium where they send in liaisons or representatives to the stewardship or Return California consortium and basically report back. And then the scout that comes back does a lot of the, suggesting and changing and doing whatnot. That seems to be the most expedient and more comfortable way that we've been able to implement this idea in this area, and I recommend it.
Yeah, and with the consortium, you're able to sort of develop standards across multiple tribes, so that say if you're in touch with a tribal member in a particular tribe that like is kind of new to it, that this will become a place that they can go and like join ISHWI and be like, okay, so here's it looks more like a thing like that is already being done that people can plug into, instead of like you said, like people just trying to go to tribes and tell them what to do, which is awkward.
And then I've done a lot of consortiums. One of the first consortiums I worked for when I was in my 20s was California Tribal TANF Partnership. And I had to fly around to 20 different counties, talk to different tribes, and get them to sign MOUs to do the county release, to do the money. So I've done this before, believe me. And in my 20s, and I'm in my 40s now. So I've got a little bit sharper at my game, I say. But but the problem is that the outcome for putting a consortium is that you need it to disband within a portion of time. It is important not to hold on to a consortium and say, this is our lifeline. It is meant to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's there as a startup. It's there to get people engaged, informed, and basically each one teach one type program. And then people should be a little bit more independent. And when they break off and say, I have enough funding to run my own program, we shouldn't be all going like, they're losers and they're not our friends anymore and they left us. We can't. We have to celebrate that. Right on, right on, right on. You got yours. You're managing your own land. You're doing your thing. And I congratulate you. This program is consortiums are a really good idea just to have a step up, because once you develop a board of representatives from different tribes and your consortium grows, that representative board is competitive. And when tribes start to compete for money and voices on a platform, you're going to have a lot of friction. So if you anticipate that it's there to, once you get to that point, that disbanding is good, then you can handle this,
So what do we have to do to initiate this consortium? It sounds like there's one already in effect. What can Return California do to facilitate this consortium and or the creation of a new one? From our last listening session, it became very clear that there needs to be some sort of clearinghouse of information that tribes can access easily to have a step-by-step of what it would take to do these things that we're talking about. And it seems really clear that that's the direction these roundtables are going in. The more Indigenous people we hear from, the more it becomes clear that this is what they want in general. Obviously, it's not everyone. There's never going to be, a complete agreement. But as long as we're facilitating the majority, I think there's enormous amount of potential here. So what can we do for the next roundtable to kind of have an actionable plan, a way to create a consortium that would encourage people to utilize your services?
Well, money That's what encourages people, money.
Yeah.
That's just easy, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is putting money into a pool together for people to manage. That's what gets everybody to get on phones and pull things together, is when there's funding involved and people want to spend it together. Okay, it's like, oh, we have a budget together collectively and we must spend the money collectively. All right, and so that's what consortiums tend to be, is a bunch of people getting together and talking about how they're going to spend the money. And so that's the first thing you have to do, is put a pool together, whether it's spending $150 or $150,000. People like to get together and talk about spending money on a project. And so the first thing that we can do is spend money on your design. Get money together on designing and planning what you need. We definitely are putting in together a website so that we can do this very thing and get paid to do consulting and create these forms, to create an MOU for you, to create these things for you. And so the thing is that we're in the beginning of this and we're on this project. So we would like to offer these services really super discounted, if not super free. And then, but so that that you can collect some money and to get this thing going. In exchange, we just need some good reviews on our website.
And also, especially for disaster recovery right now, since I know that people might have property and burn scars come out of these fires. So one of the things that we learned in trying to go for this carve out in these disaster recovery contracts is that in something like a hazard tree removal project, there's two ways that private landowners can get trees removed from a disaster recovery. One is by enrolling in the federal program, which means that they use whoever the federal government contracts for, or they can get funding for to get their own local contractors, right? So this is where a private landowner can actually sort of influence the process a little bit. So one of the problems with the campfire tree removal contract, one of the reasons why it got so held up, was because not enough landowners were signing up for the program, right? Because of this deep suspicion of the out-of-state contractors coming in and messing everything up. So one of the things that you can say is that, well, I'll enroll in the program if I can get a native crew on my property to clean it up. Like, we will enroll if, we believe in TEK, we want TEK on our land. We won't enroll unless you give tribes a carve out, right? That's one thing that you can do from a private landowner standpoint. The other thing you can do is, again, is to contract native crews directly, right, through the through this local contracting process. And that's one of the things that sort of we will be working on in the near future with ISHWE, is to sign some of these MOUs and get with the local authorities, Fire Safe Council, Natural Resource Conservation District, and be able to do that on local jurisdiction lands, but private landowners can do this too.
Yeah, it's really difficult to basically sugar or blanket one approach to all the different tribes in California, because every tribe is different. Every tribe, because it's based on on location. So, for instance, if you go to a tribe, let's get a good example. The Karuk tribe, up on the river. They have different places along the river in different parts of their terrible territory that their communities live. So say the approach that you give to the Karuks, one part of the river might not fix the other part of the river, because they're so different. They're drastically different. One's on the coast and then one's on the, there's like two different types. And that happens with the Yurok especially. There's like coast Yuroks. They actually live on the coast. They see the ocean every day. And then they have some Yuroks that live and like inland and like Witchpeck and way up in the on the Klamath River. So when you have that those different ways, I would approach, even as a Mechoopda tribal member. I've lived in about 10, 6, I don't know how many different tribal areas of California. It's just my romantic life has brought me around. But I have seen a lot of Indian country, and every tribe is different. I would approach the Yurok and Karuk tribe or Hoopa tribe way different than I would, say, the Mission tribe of Pomo Indians in the valley. It's just completely different mindset of how I talk about TEK, how I talk about contracting, and how I talk about land management. And it all would be based on a hustle, which is what's in it for the tribe. And that kind of is intimidating for a lot of folks that are building this relationship for tribes for this long good, because of their history of taking advantage and capitalizing on the weaknesses of tribes and the vulnerability of tribal people under oppression of colonization. And so it's hard, even for myself. I constantly walk around with a chip on my shoulder. Thank God I'm good looking, so it kind of looks sexy. Otherwise, it would be ugly. But I really try. I try. I'm just joking. But I really do have a chip on my shoulder. And I really have to hope that I can help design something that accommodates every way to look at a tribe, to say, this is how we can make a relationship work for land management, for land, especially housing for land trust agreements. Because the biggest problem that we do have is that the oppression of colonization is finally felt from everybody. Everybody feels it now, especially if you are not, if you're not a millionaire, if you don't make tons of money, and you're not of an upper echelon of income, you don't have a lot of money, then you're slid right under next to all of us that are being oppressed by colonization here in California. And so without us joining, if we don't join together and start fighting back and put all hands on deck and start managing this land, and I'm going to show you what eminent domain looks like. I'm going to do it for you.
We're gonna do it.
But we're going to do it all nice. We're going to do it all nice.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have one single gun in my army, and I'm not even going to have one single weapon. And this is going to be a really interesting coup d'etat that takes over in California.
Using seeds.
Using seeds, land management, and logic.
Love it. This is a perfect transition. We have the tribal chairwoman from the Esalen Nation here with us, Ms. Ramirez. Just asked her to unmute.
Okay.
They just purchased a large portion of their land back, and I was hoping that she could talk a little bit about the process they went through to do that, and then also how this tech can apply to the land that they now have control over. Luis?
Thank you, first of all. But it's not us.
Oh.
Last year, an additional tribe started, and they just have a lot of non-native people enrolled in their tribe from Esalen Institute. And so they have money and work to getting a grant from Oregon, they got, and the California Conservancy, and they purchased that land. And then if you read the articles on this tribe, they are, they call themselves Esalen Tribe of Monterey. And we're Ohlone Costanoan Esalen Nation. And I mean, what can I say other than they were able to purchase the land, and now there's a big problem with the people who have done it. And I try to stay out of it. Our people have continued. We all can prove our genealogy, all come from the mission's original records, and we know that that's not who they are. And there might be a couple of Esalen people, or what they call the Coastanoan people. But it's very, very hard to survive, because we have been there and we have been in the public eye for so long, and for a new tribe to start 1 year and do this. A lot of people think it is us, and we have a lot of questions that we've had to answer and say, well, it's not us. We don't have that land base. All I can tell you is that our people are, if you can't prove your genealogy, we have 13 core families, then you don't become a member with us. And last week, they started posting a photo on their website. And the photo is of my great-grandfather and my grandfather, great-grandmother, and great-aunt, who were identified by C.E. Kelsey as the Monterey Band of Monterey in 1906. And so now they're claiming that. In the first article that was published in the newspaper about them receiving the land is a student by the name of, well, he's not a student anymore. He was a student, and he came to work with us to do his dissertation. And in the first newspaper article, he is now with them, and he mentioned in the newspaper that he turned over all of our information to them so they can fight for federal recognition. So it's really pretty hard. We know that they can't do anything with that land, that they need to maintain it naturally. It is up in Big Sur. It is our homeland. But what can I say other than it's not us? And I have no idea what they plan to do and how they are going to manage it.
Well, I'm really sorry for making that assumption. I had no idea that there was conflict. None of the information that I read said anything about that. And I've been very active in this world for a long time. So if I don't know the truth, I can only imagine that the majority of others don't know it as well. So thank you for clarifying that. I'm sorry to bring up such a sore subject.
It's fine. I mean, I answer questions every day about it, and it's not gonna go away. And I mean, Cal Fire called me last week, and the conversation turned out really bad. And I said, this is it. I don't know how to contact them. I don't want to know how to contact them. We're doing what we need to do, and that's all we can do. I mean, these people have been fighting us within the Planning Commission, within the Board of Supervisors, and even within the Coastal Commission. I fought to protect one of our largest village sites because it's in Carmel Point, and it's very, very rich people. They don't want us there. There are burials there. There are artifacts there. It's 3 known sites. It's been dated 9,400 years old. And these people have so much money, and the houses have a height limitation of 18 feet. And so they can't go up, so they want to go down. And they're building basements and destroying the burial ground. And I had to actually fight this person because with the Coastal Commission, I was fighting to not build basements. And they actually stood up and said, go ahead, it doesn't matter. Let them disturb the ancestors, and it's online, everything. And it's like, we won now to stop the basements. So whatever they said didn't matter. We got the Coastal Commission for a 10-1, to stop the basement. So it's a lot of history. It's not easy hearing it, because it's our homeland. It's our homeland, and we know what they are doing, and we're not going to do the public fighting. So we're not doing that because it's bad enough to have your homeland a place where people are so rich where they don't care. They don't care. I mean, this one house the guy did on Carmel Point, he paid $9 million for a house. And then he comes in and has it all remodeled, tears up the landscaping without permits, and disturbed 4 ancestors. So money that is there, and they don't want us there. And
You
so
know,
that's our fight every day.
this is a perfect example of why you don't do land management around tribal interfaith or around, you know, rich communities. You just let it burn. And then you go in afterward and then you do. I mean, that's why I would not. Some areas are like, you know, if they're going to be like that, then they don't need land management. Let it burn.
Yeah.
Let your fuels, since you know so much, smarty pants. You know, they can go ahead and burn down, and then we can go. This is where we're kind of at. We wanted to do you know, we want to save people's lives. Like, you know, like, hey, let's do land management together because we share an area, and we have a brand new tribe, the Enterprise, who in the county, and they were the first ones to oppose us, throw swords at us, pretty much at meetings, shut me down, and they hired somebody from a Pomo tribe to run their programs, but the entire campfire scar is on Mechoopda tribal territory, and every Moortown, Berry Creek, and everyone that burned in the last 2 days, all their tribal land is burned down. We were having problems with their tribe saying that they had complete and total rights to the campfire, and they got all the contracts. We tried to get all the contracts in our tribal territory for our ancestors. And because we're in the same county, no one even knew that there's a difference between Mechoopda from Chico, and that this is our tribal territory. But 30 miles away, they're like, oh, we would rather deal with this tribe than deal with you. So we have all this other tribes doing repatriation of our ancestors on their land. And we had to straighten all that out. And that's all because CAL FIRE, all of the disaster recovery agencies were really so thick in the head that they didn't even know what MLD was, which is most likely descendant. I kept saying, well, we're the MLD. And they're like, what is that? And I was all, it's basically like a sheriff badge, man. It means this is my place. This is ours. This is ours. And if you don't know what the MLD is, then you shouldn't even be in the room talking about any of these bones, or, you know, any of these ancestors, any of these things that have been found. If you can't say those 3 words and know what they mean, you need to exit the room. And so she heard me.
Oh, yeah.
I did that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like I said, this dealing with tribes, dealing with land management, you're going to have to really know that we're, like I said, when we do this consortium, it's only so that I can be a liaison and talk to all the tribes and not tell them what to do, and to be real friendly so that we can all communicate, because we need a partnership. But yeah, the one tribe that's brand new that just got their recognition in their casino that they built off of their tribal land in someone else's territory, which is super naughty. They use our tribal pictures, all of our tribal pictures on their casino walls. I walk in there, I'm like, what? In their lobby, huge, of our folks in Chico. And so it's amazing, but we do get through it, and it's tough, but we do have problems like Return California. These types of entities that have the greatest intention and greatest heart can go up into one tribe and get a lot of support and adoration, which means that you've lost the rest of everybody else. And so this kind of intel is so crucial. It's almost like TEK. knowing how the tribes works is just part of TEK, traditional ecological knowledge. It's like, it's our, and if we know about it, if I told you that we have a history of fighting with certain tribes, it has never ended. It's still there. We are still fighting all these years later. If we can't find something to fight about, we will make it up. But this is the crucial part of this, even us talking and building consortiums to get these stories out. Because I've been to several conferences where federal tribal recognition for, say, the Concal tribe should be there already. They've been there, they've never left. That's their land. They're our cousins. They speak the language. We know them. They know us. You know what? And they're not federally recognized. And that's a shame, because they should be. They haven't changed. They haven't moved, you know. But we also know that the tribe 50 miles away that just made themselves out of 10 families that got kicked out of another tribe that wanted recognition, that wanted their own casino. They got an investor on their team, and they're already recognized, running casino, building, you know, luxury homes for themselves. Meanwhile, the Concal tribe, that's real natives, have been here the whole time, speaking the language, gathering the plants, doing the work. They still don't have federal recognition. So they pretty much have to piggyback. We have to, as a federal tribe, that's our neighbor, we have to go and share our federal status with them all the time, you know, for projects, because that's how unfair it is. And that's why we have to be careful with California, this land back California, and saying that it has to be a little bit of a loose, hands-off approach, because it could be that people will monopolize this and say, I want to do land management, and pretty much railroad their tribe, railroad their elders, railroad everybody into a program that nobody really wants to be, is not consenting of. So that's why it's important that that we do this right. We do this in a decolonizing way and not in a colonizing way.
So we have
I was going to say that, but that's why we're listening. That's why I'm here to hear, because I'm not going to let them stop us. You know, it's us. It's our fight to make sure they know that they may think they exist and they can do whatever they want, but we're still here. And I need to make sure, when I saw this information, that our people know. I mean, so it's good to hear that you want to work together with different tribes. Last night I had a meeting with the mayor here in San Jose and with the other two tribes of the Muecla and the Amamutsun. And we're telling them, you need to know who the real people are. You need to look at us. You need to understand what we can prove. We're not asking you to just say, well, those are the real people. No, we're going to tell you we're the real people. We're going to show you beyond the doubt that this is who we are. And work with us or don't work with us. You know, we're going to keep on moving forward. We're going to keep on trying to learn all that we can. You know, it's what you have to do. It is the fight. I've been the chairwoman since 2006. And every day I say, that's it, I'm quitting tomorrow, you know. And but we still need to learn. We still need to know about the fire procedure. I need to take that because and have my tribal members hear what you're saying, because we don't have a fire protection group. And you know how Monterey County is burning right now. And we need to do that. We need to listen, to see who's out there and join and understand it all as well.
Does
So
that
that's
mean,
why I'm here.
does that mean you're volunteering to host the next roundtable, Louise?
To where? I got nothing. Yeah. We don't have anything. We don't have no land. You know what? We have small pieces of land. We have a small piece in Monterey. We have a small piece in Pacific Grove. We have a small piece on the Presidio of Monterey, working with the Army and the Yoket Coalition. But each of those pieces are for reburials of our ancestors, because these rich people don't want us reburying our ancestors, and they fight it. But that's okay to me. I just tell my ancestors, we're still taking you home, but it's not going to be the same place, and we make sure we do with ceremony, you know,
Yeah.
and still protect them.
Well, we're at time.
Okay.
I really appreciate everyone being here, and the interactions, the engagement, the presentation. Thank you so much, Mel and Ali, for all of your hard work. Please, everybody, go to tekchico.org and check out that website. Let's work on putting together a consortium and getting some money to spend. We can do a lot if we have solidarity with one another. If each person on this call would reach out to 10 people and ask them to make a $10 donation, that's $1,000 that we can give Ali and Mel to put together a proposal for a piece of land that we could purchase in Mechoopda territory, that they could pay the property taxes and insurance on, and that we could build these cob homes and put together a demonstration site of how easy it is, and what other people who are interested could do that. I think the vast majority of property owners in the state of California would be receptive to this idea of putting land in trust for indigenous people. And in my role as outreach director for Yes California, I've had almost no opposition to the idea of returning land to tribes. It was stolen and unceded, and we have the moral high ground. So it's just a matter of doing what's right, and most people want to do what's right. So we have an incredible opportunity. So that's the ask. If anybody on the call has any suggestions for the next roundtable, who should host it, what our topics should be about, please respond to returncalifornia@gmail.com. And thank you again, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, get on the website, tekchico.org. Louise, I'm probably going to screw up your last name because I don't see it on anything. Miranda? Ramirez, there it is. Yeah, I can see it. It's like slightly, it's Ramirez. And yeah, Ramirez is in our tribe. But if you want to contact me.
Yeah, I'm going to put Allie's email in a private message to you right now.
Yeah, so we're going to private message you my email. We're doing cross training right now and getting involved with tribal members who want to do fire management, plus the TEK certification we're doing here. So there's some already positions available for work and training in Yosemite and on Highway number 88 with our Ishwi Intertribal Consortium. So right now we're just cross training people. So you could go train with the Washoe for fire management. Right now there's 15 positions available. I think Mechoopda is trying to fill up. We got 3 people going, so there's plenty of spaces. So if you know any young men who are work ready, strong backs, because they're going to be camping at the work sites. Yeah. Going to be camping at the work sites. It's 4 days on, 3 days off. There's like tons of certifications involved. And if they already are certified, say on
Chainsaw.
well, no, with not land management, but
Fire.
no, repatriation, cultural monitoring.
Oh.
Cultural monitoring, some of their cultural monitoring certification helps get a boost in pay because some of the OSHA and other things kind of help them. So any Native who has that type of training has some good certifications that bump up their pay. So definitely want to say there's a lot going on, but I just want to make sure if you're interested in getting people trained, we should start right now.
Well, let's do it. Thank you guys so much. Blessings.
Yeah.